Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the Mobile Ecosystem Forum webinar on mobile IoT, security and roaming, a common approach for the ecosystem. I'm Andrew Parkin-White and I'm an advisor to MEF on IoT. Mobile IoT is one of MEF's work programs, and for those of you that don't know MEF, we're a global trade body that represents its stakeholders. We provide a global platform for networking, advancing solutions for industry issues, and we have working groups and interactions across the ecosystem. And please contact us if you want to be part of that discussion. So today's webinar will run for about 45 minutes. It will be recorded, so you can share the recording with your colleagues via the email sent. And after the recording, we will be producing a blog that will be forwarded to you afterwards. You'll notice on the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button, so please ask questions throughout the webinar. We appreciate your interaction and your views. So I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce the expert panel who will be exploring the issues today. So we have Stephen Fitzpatrick, who's VP of IoT at Cellusys, Graham Hart-Ives, Head of IoT Sales at the JT Group, and Gerrit, who's a special advisor for the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. And the panel is going to be exploring the issues with you today. So I'm now going to hand over to them and let them introduce themselves and say their particular interest in the discussion today. So can we start with Graham?
Yeah, hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Graham Hart-Ives. I work for JT Global. JT are a Channel Islands-based telco, tier 1 telco in our own right. We have 700 and something roaming agreements, and fundamentally we can provide you with a single SIM that will work in just about every country in the world, and in most of those countries it will be on multiple networks. That's my interest. I don't know if you want some more detail there, Andrew, or...
No, that's good for now. I'm sure you'll be amazing us with your comments later on.
I'll try.
Can we hand over to Gerrit now, please?
Hi everybody, my name is Gerrit Konijnenberg. I've been with MEF for a decade or so. Currently I work at Vodafone Roaming Services, working on strategic developments, and I have a track record in roaming and IoT security. And I think my interest is to have the full awareness of capability of IoT devices roaming and the underlying security which comes with it.
Thank you, Gerrit. And now I'll hand over to Stephen.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stephen Fitzpatrick, and I'm in Cellusys, and I'm looking after the IoT sales in the division of our company. And my particular interest is around the security and also the roaming, but also the ecosystems that IoT devices find themselves in.
A few words about myself. Background is market analysis and consulting. I've worked for a range of companies, including Analysis, Mason, Oven, IDC, and KPMG. And I'm a recent joiner to MEF and looking to explore these issues in more detail. So mobile IoT has evolved from hype to reality, and companies are connecting homes, cars, electric grids, and industrial infrastructure. And we're starting to understand the real potential and challenges of IoT solutions. IoT security and mobility are essential tools as we connect billions of devices. The key questions we want to look at this afternoon is how do we make sense of these multiple technical security offers in IoT? How does IoT mobility work? Is it MNO-led or open to public networks? And what about international mobility? Is the roaming market ready to introduce roaming services to things? So I'd like to start the discussion today on IoT roaming, and I'm first going to turn to Graham and ask Graham, what do you see as the key issues in developing IoT roaming?
Thanks very much, Andrew. I think there are a number of issues to be addressed with IoT roaming. We see at JT, we are, I guess, in a privileged position of having so many roaming partners and being able to offer a SIM that works in so many different countries. What we tend to find is that people come to us with expectations that, especially following the European Union introducing sort of the Roam Like Home, that they'll be able to achieve the same price across the globe. Unfortunately, that isn't the case, because obviously all the different roaming agreements are very, very specific to individual networks. It's only within those EU countries where there's roaming. And even then, those roaming agreements are really designed for the consumer, not designed for IoT devices. I guess the other challenge that we will be facing in the future, I think, is the fact that the roaming agreements that all these SIMs are roaming on are based very much on consumer data and not on the small levels of IoT data that devices typically do. And this will, I think, lead to a change in the way that IoT connectivity is charged for. I think what we'll end up seeing is that there'll be more of a line rental per network, and to a certain extent less of a per megabyte charge. I think we'll probably see that introduced with NB-IoT and probably Cat M1 in the future. I think the other challenge is being able to manage that installed base. If you've got 100,000 SIMs spread to the four winds on the planet, then you need to be able to see where those SIMs are, what they're doing, are they working in the devices you think they're working on, are they secure, haven't gone rogue, no one's stolen them to go and look at cat videos on YouTube. And those are the kind of security issues that we face daily. And I think any MNO that's in this market space needs to have a platform, needs to have a SIM management platform that enables their customers to manage as much of their devices, and much about their devices as possible.
Thank you very much, Graham. I'd like to hand over to Gerrit now, and particularly pick up this issue of IoT pricing and the cost of connectivity. Graham said, we're on consumer pricing, and it's a very different pricing and commercial scenario for IoT roaming customers. Do you have a view on that, Gerrit?
Yes, certainly. I think that in principle, the mobile operators amongst each other have to, of course, have interoperative tariffs in place on a wholesale level, which can cater for the needs of the consumers, because in the end, wholesale is enabling retail. So what needs to happen, and I think this is just starting, especially for a narrowband IoT, narrowband roaming, is that the operators jointly agree on new tariff structures for 4G, but also on the way forward for 5G, of course. So there's a lot of work to be done in the background. On the other side, I think it's also the responsibility of the, let's say, call it the consumer or the enterprise customer, to have the know-how about roaming, the underlying tariffs, as Graham pointed out. They're different per country. So from that know-how, I think it's ideal that the enterprise customer then sets new business models the way forward. Very often there is a concept, okay, this is the device, the consumer will pay, let's say, €5 a month, but then totally it's forgotten that the device can travel towards other countries where roaming can be extremely expensive, for example, on some African countries, which then will run into, let's say, business model issues, and in the end, cost which cannot be charged to the end consumer. So yeah, I fully agree with that observation, but I think we also have to really raise the awareness of the issues on roaming and the underlying cost structures.
Very good, thank you. And what I'm interested to know, that there are lots of different solutions out there, and I seem to notice that one size doesn't fit all. We've got logistics companies, IoT solutions that are permanently roaming, automotive, operating on different devices, different networks. So how do we accommodate those different kinds of needs? Stephen, are you able to come in there?
Yeah, absolutely. The big challenge, I suppose, is that the many different ecosystems that are available out there, and then obviously project by project will obviously be different. You know, so that's where, you know, a telco or partners ecosystem will obviously come in and help quite a lot, because within IoT there is certain you know, one size fits all kind of solutions out there, but you know, more often you're going to find within the IoT world that each product is obviously different, and then the consumption can be slightly different as well. So it can be very, very hard to manage. But you know, when people concentrate on either the low band requirements or then the high band requirements, then you can kind of get a grasp what the requirement really is. But yeah, I mean, I think it's more to do with, you know, sharing of information and you know, going with what's best in practice on the actual ecosystem management side of things. But most certainly, when people want to roam, whether, you know, it's on a 2G, 3G, 4G, NB-IoT network, you know, the requirements are always going to be pretty much the same. That people will want good roaming rates, they want stable roaming, and they want their devices to be connected. And I think that will always be a challenge as it goes forward, because we've got a number of the major players on the markets, all competing for the same amount of business. But they are great challenges to have. But you know, by having an ecosystem of partners that can help you navigate through where the IoT minefield begins is always a good start.
Can I just add to that? I think that you know, we start off by focusing on GSM cellular solutions, but actually there's plenty of other solutions out there. There's Sigfox, there's the LoRaWAN solutions, and I actually, bizarre as this may sound, given my mortgage is paid for me by selling cellular connectivity, I actually think LoRaWAN has a proper place. I think you know, if you want to connect up lots and lots of devices on a campus, for example, in a building, you don't want each one of those on a SIM, and you probably, if you're not the owner of the building, or the building is leased out to various different tenants, then you don't want them on Wi-Fi. You want them on something that you can control, and LoRaWAN, I think, offers the perfect solution for that. I think anybody coming into the IoT market space really needs to properly think about exactly what they're trying to connect, how much data they're going to be passing, where that data is going to be traveling to and from, and from your side, Stephen, how secure that data needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know, there is so many great technologies out there. You know, they are being utilized. Obviously, you know, cellular is king in a lot of markets out there, but you know, no matter what band your device is going to be on, there is always a security issue along the way there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but may I add?
Carry on, Gerrit.
I fully agree that there are many use cases where LoRaWAN is fantastic, and I think only when the devices travel, in the end, cellular connectivity is needed. But then, if we then look at the air interface, which is very often still SS7 signaling, that air interface is still not secured, and there's an old protocol which is still around, and many IoT devices are connecting to that. So I think we have to set apart the, let's say, the IT kind of connectivity and the security which comes along with that, and the mobile or wireless security, which I think up to 1/3 of all the global connectivity for IoT devices at this moment is already cellular. So I think there are different use cases and a different need for security measurements.
So within those use cases, what challenges are organizations facing when they're rolling out IoT roaming solutions? Is that one for Graham?
Yeah, myself or Gerrit, I'd have thought. What challenges do they face? There's any number of challenges. I think finding someone, the key challenge, I think, if someone coming into this market for looking for an IoT solution. They've just been told by their CEO, go and make our cat flaps IoTable. There's a whole number of issues they're going to face. One is, I think probably the first one is, well, where do you turn? Do you build it in-house, or do you go to a systems integrator and get them to put something together for you? We see both solutions, and we see both solutions working really well, and we see both solutions working not so well, shall we say. So I think you need to sort of choose your partner carefully. If you want to build it in-house, it is worth just trying to break down the key elements of what you're trying to do. And work with experts in those areas. If you're happy to outsource it and get one of the large systems integrators to build it for you or work with you, again, carefully select them and make sure that they understand what the business benefits of creating this IoT product are. Because we get approached pretty regularly with people with some wonderful ideas about how they're going to change the world with this IoT this or IoT that. And when you sit back and sort of the cold light of day think, well, I maybe don't have experience of your industry, but I just can't see that as a solution to a problem. I can see it as a solution looking for a problem maybe, but not a solution to a problem. And I think if you can't easily answer that, well, what problem am I trying to solve? IoT probably isn't the way to go down. That isn't the route to go down to start with. But once you're down that route, work with a trusted provider, work with someone that's going to be around for a long time and that has been around for a long time. Make sure you future-proof your product, whether that's on connectivity, whether it's on security, whether it's on sensors. All of the elements need to have an element of, all the elements need to have longevity within them, or the ability to upgrade, preferably remotely. And plan for your product to be out there for probably twice as long as you think it's going to be, because these stuff does get sent out there. It does last as long as it's not battery powered, can last a long time. And what you don't want to be doing is finding out, for example, the 2G network gets switched off and you've only got a 2G modem. You want to make sure that the processor still will be supported if there's bug fixes and stuff like that. And then I guess the other thing would be security. Talk to someone like Stephen around the security, the device, the end-to-end solution that you're providing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just adding to your point there as well, I think the enterprise IoT projects are starting to move beyond just being business automation, and they're truly transforming revenue streams now. So the likes of 2018 now, we're starting to see that curve of the X billions that are due to come onto the IoT world finally actually coming to the fruition through the manufacturing processes and everything put in there. Unfortunately, just addressing the security issue, I mean, I think security now is becoming a focus where over the last number of years, the security was always something that people were conscious of, but didn't really understand where the vulnerabilities are on their networks. And then obviously they wanted to get product out at a very, very low cost without going to market and killing the product before it dies. And then suddenly, security being that big scare, a big fright that they actually have in front of them. So there is a number of, security elements really that people should be factoring in on the deployment stage, but equally they should be looking at this from a much earlier stage as well. But there is a lot of education needed within the sector in terms of where that vulnerability, where that threat actually really is within the actual product and obviously the ecosystems and so on.
Seems a good point to move our discussion onto the IoT security aspect of our discussion today. And you need to mention a few issues, Stephen, around mobile IoT security. So you say security is an afterthought, people putting devices out there and sensors alive in the field, but with very little security?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the two areas that have been mostly affected by this have been healthcare, and then manufacturing. So the manufacturing guys being the smart meters, the sensor guys, you know, these people have been the most exposed. And then obviously within the healthcare side of things, with the diagnostics and active tracking of prevention of disease and pacemakers and insulin deployment and things like that, they have all become very vulnerable within there. I believe that the car industry seem to have addressed this now, maybe, you know, obviously because there's been a very high profile fines and everything happening in the US markets within there. But, you know, it is a very much a growing sector, because people are seeing this as potentially being backdoors into larger scale, you know, businesses, the likes of national grids, whether that being, government led, or whether that's just been value led within there. The biggest, area of, the most visible area of attacks have been within the denial of service, and that has been very noted over the last couple of years. 2017 alone, there was 314 telecom networks, had actually been impacted by IoT security, and you know, the main areas that they were attacked was automotive, healthcare, and manufacturing areas. So there is a lot of education needed, and there is also a lot of best practice that needs to be done, and it's becoming, you know, very interesting now. From the research that we're seeing and from the conversation we're having, you know, the net spend on security this year should be in the region of about 1.5 billion for this year. Now, 1.5 billion sounds like an absolute huge amount, but considering the spend within IoT is about 780 billion per year, it's still a fraction within there, and that is truly down to an education and, you know, markets needing to drive the focus on a security element that is the requirement in there. The huge question that I always will leave with people is, you know, if there is a vulnerability, there is a problem. You know, how many companies, how many products actually survive, and many companies survive after they've had an attack once it becomes public. You know, the numbers will be frightening. You know, some of the biggest players on the planet have all been attacked, and some of the smallest guys don't even get their products off the line because of these things. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic.
So would you say that the desire for a low-cost solution is impeding security?
Yeah, with IoT devices, particularly, the race to the bottom has kind of driven a lot of product. If you look at different markets, the likes of the US, where where price isn't always the most important aspect of the actual performance, is probably more outweighed from the pricing on it there. Maybe within Europe and the rest of the world, we probably need to look at bringing in standards for performances of product, similar to what the US have been doing. If a product is underperforming, it should possibly not be on a network. It shouldn't be out on the field. Maybe our standards, we could look at implementing standards of performance and network quality, and then obviously looking at the security aspects as well within there, because we're looking at billions of devices coming onto our networks over the coming years, and trying to address that after the horse is bolted will be quite difficult if there is a problem on a network, or if national infrastructure has been taken down, or whatever has happened within the actual product.
So you mentioned security standards. Do you think those are intrinsic now, or does one size fit all, or do we need multiple approaches?
I truly believe that you do need to have a multiple stack within there. You've got your ecosystem and your cloud security, there. A lot of people will see that, will understand the requirement of an IP protection and having your cloud protected within there. What people are forgetting is that they're forgetting how vulnerable the cellular networks really are in terms of how open they are and what communication can get in there. From a signaling and an IP protection, people do need to really be educated within the signaling side of things. Once they actually find out where the issue is within the signaling, what they will actually do is they will actually, look to try and correct that. And there is solutions out there to make this to secure your SIM, to secure your cloud, and have that multiple approach where you don't allow have access to your backdoor onto your infrastructure, getting access to whatever information you have in your back office, or whether somebody just wanted to actually just cause a national disaster or whatever, and that is they are the real solutions, the real ideas, the real problems that are actually out there in this world.
No, it's interesting you mentioned the levels of security. From what I've read, there are many potential security holes: the network, the device, the cloud, the data. Where do you see anywhere that has a greater vulnerability than anywhere else?
I think the most simple one is actually, believe it or not, is password. The amount of people that actually get devices out there that are controlling traffic lights, train level crossings, and have default passwords still on the devices. So you have to go back to the basics within here. I think educating from a cellular point of view would be absolutely ideal, because that is a very, very, very open, vulnerable location within there. People take security very lightly, but when you have any type of vulnerability within a device, whether that being a majorly critical device, whether it's a heart pacemaker, a traffic light, a part of a car, or whether that's just a thermometer, these things, once they're open, once there is a vulnerability, there is a potential to be hacked. And God knows what type of information can be got, or whether infrastructure can be pulled down and stopped. But the denial of service, tracking locations, intercepting data, SMS and voice, is something that happens on a daily basis, and there is certainly solutions to secure that. And obviously that is where my main focus is the security aspect of securing the SIM.
I'd like to bring Gerrit and Graham back into the conversation now and see if they've come across any particular security issues when they've been rolling out solutions to clients.
Yeah, let me go first then. I fully agree that healthcare is an issue, but transportation sectors, also like shipping, are having issues. There's the Maersk hijacking of one of a ship with ransomware. I do agree with the amount of DDoS being more frequent, but also more heavy in their attacks. And this is all indeed calling for, I think, better standards and having security by design. Last year, the ENISA, the European National Cybersecurity Agency, has been working on a piece of research whereby it became clear that many operators, whether those are MVNOs or MNOs in Europe, still don't have sufficient firewall systems. At Vodafone, we do have them. At JT, they are installed, but still, I think that is something which has to be put in place rapidly. And another thing where we can work together in the whole ecosystem, also with the different MEF members, is to work on what I call visibility of security, because in the end, we want to be sure that we are secured. And if there's a threat, we want to be warned, so that, for example, in the platform, you can maybe temporarily deactivate your devices if such a DDoS attack would come to a network. So I think, yeah, standards are needed. I think proof of quality, operators should prove that they have sufficient firewalls, but also I think for the end consumers who pay for the connectivity or who have vulnerable devices, they would love to see more about security. They want to be secure, that they are secured. I think that's where we need to work more on standards.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think having there is a someone picked up on it earlier. There is a drive, especially in Europe, to have the lowest cost product, and that can often lead to security vulnerabilities, but also network issues. The last thing we want as a responsible roaming partner is to have a device or a number of devices going rogue on another operator's network. The last thing we'd want to do is to bring cells down in other people's network through devices that our customers are using. So I think it's beholden on all of us to make sure that both the security of the devices, as well as the quality of the devices, and making sure they are fit for purpose, whether that's GSMA specifications or future proofing with security, if and when security specifications become prevalent.
Thank you for that. We talked a little bit about some of the main risks around IoT security, and IoT is often in mission critical applications, and we've seen applications in power stations, smart meters, the automotive sector. Stephen touched on this earlier, but what can a company do to survive after a security breach? Would you like to take that, Stephen?
Yeah, it can be very hard for a product that has been attacked or has shown vulnerability to get sales again, especially if it's something that's very open. I think the best example of that has been the nanny cams. That one of them, I can't remember which of the where it was, but I'm nearly certain it was in the US where the nanny cams were hacked, and people were getting very, very freaked out over what was the potential or who was watching on the other side. That particular company don't think they sold any further product within there. I think once you do get any type of particular attack, and it does become obviously very public knowledge, I don't think there is a way back for that product, and I don't think there can potentially be a way back for for a company that has been badly attacked in any particular way. People don't want their product out there, their information. The GDPR rollout that we've all done over the last kind of 12-18 months has kind of highlighted that for people a lot more. So there is a huge vulnerability to a company that leaves themselves very open, and that can be very risk averse for potential sales, for growth, but also for reputation.
Well, do you think there should be standards introduced globally for security rolled out as standard in IoT devices?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think everything should be really qualified again. If Graham touched it as well there, putting really poor product out there, and if you get a poor product from Europe and it doesn't pass TRP and TIS in the US, the product doesn't go onto their networks. If it underperforms when it's out there, it gets thrown off the network and it gets blacklisted. In Europe, we don't do that. In the rest of the world, we don't do that. So, the race to the bottom, putting the cheapest product out there just to get out to the market, sometimes can be, something that, can hamper, sales of good quality products down the road. Adding some security, layers within there. It's only a matter of time before that becomes regulation, I'm presuming, because it's all been led by by governments being really scared and frightened of what potential vulnerabilities there, especially when you're looking at all the national grids, all the mission critical traffic lights, stuff like that, floodplains, all being automated with SIM, with devices and stuff like that. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. I do see a way where we can, as a group, probably get some standards in terms of what the quality of product is, but also what the quality of the security, or the basic levels of what security should look like on a product.
I'm going to ask a general question so people can jump in. Do you think there's sufficient IoT security expertise out there? So do the MNOs have the skill sets in this area? Perhaps Gerrit could start the discussion.
Yes, I think from an M&O perspective, there's no know-how. There's a lot of know-how. But I think also referring to your question, what to do, I think what we should do is make more, not maybe standards at the moment, but very simple checklists, industry checklists, like what to do if a device was compromised by an attack. Like standard step 1 is reset passwords. Step 2 is check APN settings. That is the data information still going to the right point? Check if the devices are still online. So these are just examples that, yes, we can create these kind of standard checklists, which will help the industry forward. But that you cannot do only from an M&O perspective, because we tend to think from the connectivity point of view. But also, you know, we have to think also about the radio functions, about the hardware of the device, as I mentioned earlier, the billing models. So there's a whole list of activities which we should work on together in this industry to help it growth in a very healthy way. That's how I take it.
And Graham, can I throw the same question over to you?
Yeah, I actually agree with Gerrit. I think I can't speak for all MNOs, but I know within ours we've got some very good guys and ladies as well, ladies and gentlemen, who are all over our security, all the security side of the business. We take it incredibly seriously, both the device level, but of course bearing in mind that we're not just an IoT network, nor a Vodafone. You know, we've got security across the piece for all of our devices, not just the IoT ones. So we need to be cognizant of the fact that there are a wide range of devices on any given network at any time. And yeah, so that therefore all MNOs have a responsibility to make sure every aspect of their network is as secure as possible, whether it's the billing, whether it's the radio side, whether it's, you know, the device side.
Thank you for that. Just to remind people, if you've got any questions, please do ask them. We're getting to the stage now where I will be asking a few of the final questions. And I'm going to go back to IoT roaming now, and I have a couple of questions in this area. So the first question is, are technologies and players able to fully exploit market potential at present? How do they manage this IoT connectivity? Maybe start, Gerrit, with that one, please.
Sorry, I did not hear the first part of your question.
Are technologies available and can players fully exploit market potential for IoT roaming?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yes, I'm very positive about what is all there. It's just how to apply things. I think that is where the awareness has to grow.
And Graham, do you have a comment on that?
No, I broadly agree. I think we're in an interesting point in the evolution of IoT at the moment, where there are multiple connectivity solutions, multiple technologies available. One size isn't going to fit all, and potentially one operator isn't going to fit all. If you want to go down the cellular route, so yeah, I think right now you're able to make the choices for the longevity of any product that you want to develop. You might not be able to get the price point some people want, but at the end of the day, the networks have to make money and keep the towers powered, etc. And so my take on it is that if you're relying on a very, very low cost comms to enable your business case, you might want to question your business case.
Thank you. Another question that's come in, do we need frameworks for IoT roaming? So for example, with the connected car, it's generating a lot of data, and the data is primarily for telematics and not for the consumer. And then there are issues when a vehicle would move from, for example, an EU to a non-EU state. What are the issues around the kind of frameworks for IoT roaming beyond some of the markets that we we traditionally know have a more regulated approach?
I'll take that first if you like. I think, yeah, in an ideal world, we'd have one flat roaming rate for everybody. However, we're not in an ideal world, we're in the real world. And so I think you really need to the person who is capturing and using the data really needs to decide what that data is worth to them. Where, for example, if you take the automotive market, the comms in the back of the car, streaming Netflix, etc., is that vital to the safety of the car? No. So if you go into a more expensive area, then do you really need it? However, is the system management information you're getting back, which also tends to be a lot smaller data, of course. Don't bear that in mind. We're not talking gigabytes of data typically. Is that vital? Well, yeah, yes, it is. And so those mechanisms for working out the most effective way of buying that data needs to be put in place. Now, that could, for example, be an EU ICC solution. So as you go across the border, you actually download a local profile that's a more cost-effective profile. So in effect, your SIM becomes a local SIM on a local network.
Very good. Gerrit, would you like to come in there?
Yes, I fully agree with that observation. Is that the telematics part in the cars is way lower at the moment than the personal usage for entertainment. And if you look at standardization, I think that using the eSIM, the EU ICC, is indeed at the moment used for data, and this is a data connectivity for enterprise customers. It is for the enterprise customers, but for the consumers using the EU ICC, I think we're still in the industry far away from deployment on that side. So I find it difficult, but let's not forget that there's no one solution fits it all. There are different deployments, and the cars is the most heavy one and the most difficult one, since it is traveling throughout Europe and beyond. And you hit areas where the roaming might be very expensive. So I think there indeed, Andrew, we do need a kind of a common approach in Europe and beyond, and to define what is now used for let's say the enterprise part of the car, the telematics, and what is used for the consumer, and how are we going to solve that? And I think that's something where the mobile operators have to work on. For us as Vodafone, one big player in Europe, it's easier than if you are a local operator dealing with your surrounding countries. And yes, indeed, the roaming in Europe is regulated, but we want to go far below, of course, those kind of regulated wholesale prices to cater for massive deployment of gigabytes of entertainment in a car. So yeah, a lot of work to do again.
Yes, indeed. So I've got one final question now, and this is more in Stephen's field. If you had to identify a single issue in mobile IoT security, what would that issue be?
Education. People not knowing or not understanding where the actual vulnerabilities really lie. And I think from a group like ourselves, it's down to us to educate people and show them where the solutions are to the problems. And that is something that has definitely come to light in many of the meetings that I've been to fairly recently, but some very large enterprise clients where they're not understanding where that vulnerability really lies. A lot of companies thinking that because they have security in the cloud means that their devices is protected. It can be very daunting for people when they realize that they're not really fully protected. So yeah, I would say definitely education would be the big issue there.
Well, at this point, I'm going to wind up the webinar this afternoon. I'd like to say a big thank you to Graham, Gerrit and Stephen for their participation this afternoon, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. We will, of course, be writing up the webinar in terms of creating a blog, and we'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording, so you can share this with your colleagues. If you do have any questions after the webinar, please do send them to us. I can be reached on andrew@mobileecosystemforum.com. So I will draw an end and say thank you and goodbye.